President Biden told Israel to pound sand, and Israel told America, get rid of this guy. I'll have all the details coming up on In Focus. You know how sometimes when you are looking for something on Google, you end up with something else, and then after you get the thing that you didn't mean to get, you end up thinking, well, maybe it was important that this is what I got. Maybe it was meant to be. So last night, I was trying to remember this statement that was made by a woman named Sabine Tasa from Netiv HaSara, a moshav very close to Gaza that was invaded on October 7th. And she was talking about how the handyman from Gaza that worked in everybody's houses, named Khalil, was actually a Hamas spy. And that was how they knew who lived where, who had a gun, who had a dog, who had children, how old the children were, who worked for the army, who was in the army, who was in the police, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and where, of course, all the guns in the Netiv HaSara were. So I was looking for that film of Sabine because Jonathan Corticus, I think one of the IDF spokespeople who was brought in for reserves, I think he's a lieutenant colonel or a colonel. Anyway, he did a Twitter space, and he gave the data. He said that the large majority of the murderers who invaded Israel on October 7th weren't actually official members of Hamas. They were just regular innocent civilians, uninvolved civilians, that you had more innocent, uninvolved civilians who invaded Israel, who burned our families alive, who raped our women, who kidnapped our people, and who sadistically murdered the victims on October 7th, who were not part of Hamas, who were just regular folks from Gaza, men, women, and children. Then you had actual uniformed Hamas terrorists who had trained for this mission for years. So as a result, I was looking to see the video of Sabine Tasa talking about this man, Khalil, who had worked in everybody's house and everybody thought was so wonderful and gentle. And actually, he was a Hamas intelligence officer, and he was getting all of the information on the people who lived in Netiv HaSara and bringing it to Hamas. So instead of finding that short clip of her talking about it, I saw a half-an-hour interview with Sabine Tasa and one of her sons. His name is Koren. He is 12 years old. And people who saw the IDF spokesman tape or video or movie of the atrocities from October 7th saw Corinne together with his younger brother, Shai. They're 12 and 8 years old. In the movie, it was one of the most arresting portions of the film or one of the most traumatizing portions of the film, because the boys had been with their father, and their father jumped on a hand grenade in order to save them. And then the Hamas terrorists who had been attacking them, they were in a shelter, sort of forced them back into their house, and they were there, and they were talking amongst themselves, and the Hamas terrorists were drinking their Coca-Cola and eating their food while these two boys are talking about one, Shai, the 8-year-old, lost his eye, and he was saying that he was blind, and Corinne was talking about how he wanted to die and how they killed their father. And then the film, people who watched the film didn't know if these two boys had been kidnapped, if they were murdered, what happened, and the answer wasn't given to them. And so the answer is yes, thank God they survived, because they were able to run away. The terrorists left for whatever reason, and they ran to their mother, who was next door, and she let them into her house, and they were in the safe room. They were both very wounded. Shai particularly was wounded by the hand grenade that their father jumped on in order to save their lives, and Corinne was also wounded. Their older brother was murdered. He had left 10 minutes before the bombing began to go to the beach, at Zikim, and Hamas sent over 10 rubber boats with 12 terrorists in each boat to massacre everybody on the beach and then move on. And so their oldest brother, 17-year-old Or, was executed, shot in the head, and actually his execution was, like the father's death, were captured by GoPro cameras that the Hamas terrorists were wearing when they carried out the execution, and then broadcast on their Telegram pages, Facebook, etc. So Or, 17, was murdered, and the 15-year-old brother was with the mom in the safe room, and he was in a state of shock. And the two boys came in and they were wounded. And so the interview that I watched last night, it was taped like late October on the popular show on Channel 14, The Patriots. So it's Sabine and Corinne talking about what happened. And it was a very hard interview to watch it right before bed. It was a bad idea, but so at the end, the host, Magal asked, first he asked Corinne if he had a message for the prime minister, and this 12-year-old boy that he is, he said he couldn't think of anything he wanted to say to the prime minister. And the mother said, yeah, she motioned, I do. And so Inon turned to her, and I just want to play a clip of what she said here, very short, promise.
אתה רוצה להגיד משהו לראש הממשלה אם הוא שומע אותך? יש לך מה להגיד?
לא יודע.
לא. את רוצה?
כן.
בבקשה.
תמחקו את עזה. אני רוצה שתמחקו את עזה. אין אימון. אין פרטנר לשלום. תמחקו את עזה מהמפה. אני רוצה פצצת הירושימה. מוכנה לנדוד 10 שנים. אנחנו נחזור לנתיב 10. אנחנו נקום על הרגליים. אנחנו עם חזק. עברנו הולוקוסט. ועברנו יום שחור. אבל never again.
So what is she saying here? She's saying what is reasonable. We want to go home. She had said before the part that I just showed you, she said, yes, I want to go back to Netiv Asara, the house that my husband built. They were saved because their husband anticipated the invasion, and he built the house as a bunker so that it was concrete framed so that it couldn't be burned down to the ground. It had doors that were fireproof and that were with the best locks in Israel so they couldn't get in. Same thing, their safe room had a lock on it so that when they blasted their way in, they couldn't get to the family in the safe room. So that's why they were able to survive, the mother and the 3 surviving sons, because they had anticipated the invasion, because they saw what was going on in Gaza, and they know that there's, we can't defend ourselves. For years, the residents of the border communities with Gaza had been warning that Hamas was preparing for war, that they were watching them, that they were building guard towers. There was one right directly across from Netiv Asara that was put up just a few weeks before the invasion, and it was used on October 7th to blow down the intelligence balloon that was in the air. So they knew that this was going to happen. They saw what was going on the other side of the fence. But the security geniuses in the army, and Benny Gantz and Gadi Eisenkot, both former IDF chiefs of general staff, they were in love with this concept of defense as the basis for our security strategy, that all we have to do is build this big fence and everything will be fine. And they'll do their thing and we'll do ours, and never the twain shall meet. And of course, that was a complete lie, and it doesn't work. And so what Sabine Tasa is saying here, she's an incredible woman, and so powerfully, she's saying, I want to go back to the house that my husband built us. I want to raise my kids there. I want to go back to the scene of the murder. I want to live there. That's our home. But I can't go unless the army does its job and wipes Gaza off the face of this planet. This isn't a demand for revenge, although she's certainly justified in demanding vengeance for what happened to her family. It's not for vengeance. It's for the preservation of life. It's for the preservation of this country, right? It's for the preservation of the Jewish people, and by way, and we'll talk about this in a second, the preservation of freedom on earth. And it's all very much contingent on eradicating Hamas. And again, this is a society that is devoted to genocide, which is what Kornikis explained simply by giving the numbers. that there were several more thousand civilians from Gaza who invaded Israel and conducted the slaughter of October 7th than there were actually uniformed terrorists who were engaged in it. Okay? So these are things that are important, and I wanted to begin my discussion of the arms embargo that the Biden administration has just declared against Israel officially yesterday with an interview by Biden on CNN. And we'll just show this clip real quick.
I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities, to deal with that problem. We're going to continue to make sure Israel is secure in terms of Iron Dome and their ability to respond to attacks like came out of the Middle East recently. But it's just wrong. We're not going to supply the weapons and the artillery shells used that have been used.
Artillery shells as well.
Yeah, artillery shells.
So what did Biden say here? What he said was, I opened up by saying pound sand. What he said was, you can defend yourself. How do you defend yourself? Well, along the lines of the security fence that all of the geniuses who were running our IDF and our security apparatuses for decades said, this is how we do it, right? We build a big wall and then everything will be fine, right? No. So he was saying the same thing. You won the war with Iran, right? When you intercepted 300 cruise and ballistic missiles and drones, right? You won it. You're not allowed to go after Iran. What, you want to go on offense? No. You Jewish people, all you're allowed to do is intercept incoming projectiles. You are not allowed to go after Iran or any of its terror proxies, whether it's Gaza, whether it's Lebanon, whether it's the Houthis, whether it's the Palestinian Authority. It doesn't matter. All you're allowed to do is thwart incoming projectiles, and they're allowed to get as strong as they want to. And in fact, the United States of America is going to give them billions of dollars, each separately and all of them together, and Iran directly, in order to pay them off and let them be as strong as they want. Because you're going to be cowering in your shelters on the other side of the fence, and that's all you're allowed to do. Okay? That's all you're allowed to do. That's the ironclad guarantee of Israel's defense and Israel's security that the Biden administration is offering, because any offensive operation that you do is going to make you into a pariah state. We're embargoing offensive arms to Israel. He said, all of the aircraft or Air Force ordnance that Israel is dependent on, because the United States convinced us not to build our own fighter jet, the Leviathan, in the 1980s, by saying, you can have an ironclad guarantee that we will provide you with the fighter jets and with the bombs that you need, etc. We're going to give you the F-16s and later the F-35s, etc. And you're fine. And this is your strategic arm, and the United States guarantees that. And now in our hour of need, they say, no, you have no Air Force anymore. We're not giving you any of the bombs that you need in order to attack your enemies from the air. We're done with that. No artillery cover for your ground forces because we're denying you artillery shells. Same thing with tank shells. And this has been going on for months. I've been talking about how they've been slow walking the transfer of the artillery and the tank and the aircraft ordnance to Israel since, I think, January, right? It began in January. And so here we have it. Now it's out in the open. President Biden himself is saying, no, all you're allowed to do is defend yourself. And when you're faced with enemies who exist in order to wipe the Jewish people off the face of the earth, he's saying, we're siding with the Hitler. We're siding with the Nazis. We're siding with the people who want to put you on cattle cars. But in today's version of that, which is nuclear bombs for Iran, which is chemical weapons and 150,000 rockets and missiles and mortars of all ranges to Hezbollah, and Hamas remaining in charge of Gaza, retaining its conventional forces, retaining its regime, and we're going to seize control even of your ability to have a maritime blockade of Gaza by building them their own port that's going to be guaranteed by the United States. We're going to do all of this while pretending that we have your back, that we have an ironclad commitment to Israel's security. Okay, that's what Biden just said, he said, I have totally betrayed Israel. I am totally betraying the Jews. And that's another aspect to it. It's not just the Jews in Israel who are betrayed by this. It was Bill Ekman said it on Twitter, who is somebody that all of you should be paying attention to because he says a lot of really smart things. And on Twitter, he said, look, you know, Biden says, you know, that obviously it sends a terrible message to Hezbollah and Hamas and Iran that, you know, in its hour of need, the United States is turning tail on Israel and embargoing weapons transfers to Israel. But it, you know, it also tells all of the anti-Semitic rioters on campus that violence pays, that anti-Semitism pays, that if you attack Jewish faculty and students systematically over a period of 7 months to the point where you're turning campuses from sea to shining sea on fire in this inferno of Jew hatred, not only will you not be punished for it, you will be rewarded. I am going to answer your demands. You're demanding that the United States betray Israel and stand with the people who massacred the Tasa family and their neighbors in Netiva Asara and in Be'eri and in Nachal Oz and in Nir Oz and in Kfar Aza and in Netivot and in Sderot. Cool. And of course, at the Nova Party, then yes, we are standing with them. We are standing with the Palestinians. We are standing with Hamas. We are standing with Iran. We are standing with Hezbollah. Right? That's what they're saying. That's exactly what they're saying. Violence pays. Anti-Semitism pays. You are going to be rewarded for what you did on campuses. Look, a week after your protest tents were very gently taken down and you're saying it was an act of genocide against you on Columbia campus because you can get away with it because we're giving you a pass because we're letting you break the law. Not only are we letting you break the law, we are abiding by your demands. We're cutting off offensive weapons to Israel, and all we're letting these Jew boys do is protect themselves with missiles that we're going to give them because we're nice and we have an ironclad guarantee of Israel's security. Right? That's precisely the message that Biden is giving to the anti-Semitic rioters on college campuses. I have your back. I'm with you. I heard your voices. And here, I'm embargoing the evil Israelis. I'm embargoing the Tasa family. I'm not going to let them return home to Netiva Asara. I'm not going to let the tens of thousands of Israelis who live in the border communities in the north with Hezbollah go home. They're not going to be able to go home because it's not just a question of Rafah. Israel, senior diplomatic official said this morning, Israel has the munitions that we need in order to carry out the Battle of Rafah. And the senior diplomatic source said it. He said, look, you know, it is a problem for the message that it sends to Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran, to be sure. But what the senior source didn't say was, you know, what does it mean? Because we're still waiting for the big battle. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said the other day that he expects us to go into a major ground operation, major ground war with Hezbollah in the summer. So what the Americans are saying is, no, you're not going to be able to go after Hezbollah. We're not going to support you. In fact, we'll condemn you at the UN Security Council and we'll turn you into an international pariah. And we're going to, not only are we going to withhold offensive arms from Israel, but we're going to, instead, it's possible that we're going to initiate an international arms embargo against you under a UN Security Council resolution. It certainly could happen. The United States is openly betraying Israel. That's what's happening. The United States, under the Biden administration, is siding now, without any question, without blinking, with Hamas, with the people who killed 1,200 Israelis on October 7th. Again, not just Hamas. It's the Palestinian people. It's the over 80% of Palestinians in Judea and Samaria and Gaza who are ecstatic over what happened on October 7th. It's them that the Biden administration is standing with against Israel. And you know, the question is, what is this about? Is this really about Michigan? Is this really because Biden thinks that the way to win the elections is by going all out Jew hater? I'm not sure. Let me just give you the results. Axios ran a poll that was published yesterday of college students. It said that the margin of error is 2.7%. So the numbers are pretty remarkable. It works out that the issue that college students, so that, you know, college-aged young Americans, which are supposed to be the demographic that Biden is most concerned about, right? The issue that interests them the least is the conflict in the Middle East. Let me just go through the numbers because they're important. They asked the college students, they gave them 9 issues, and they asked them to say which one, to rank them in terms of importance. Or maybe they just asked, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? One or the other. Either it was a rankings thing, or they said, how many of you care about this? How many of you care about that? Probably the latter, because it's easier to do. So healthcare reform is a top issue that college kids care about. 40% of them care about healthcare reform. Education funding and access is a close second. 38% of American college students say that economic fairness and opportunity is most important to them. 37% of American college students say that racial justice and civil rights is the most important issue for them. 36% of college students on American college campuses say that climate change is the most important subject for them. 35% say that gun control and gun safety is the most important issue on the agenda as far as they're concerned. 32% say that immigration policies is the most important issue for them going into the November elections. 21% said that national security and terrorism are the most important issues for them going into the elections in November. And 13% of college students in the United States said the conflict in the Middle East is the most important issue for them. 13%. Not even close. Unbelievable. 15% said national security and terrorism. Did I say 21? 21 was into immigration policies. 15% national security, terrorism, and 13% the conflict in the Middle East. So the conflict in the Middle East is the least important issue for college students in the United States. So if you're trying to go after their votes, you inflame the issue that's least important to them. That's an incredible thing. Again, it just shows you're going to lose Pennsylvania. The Biden administration, Senator John Fetterman, who is a Democrat, said he has a sharp disagreement with the Biden administration over what they just did to Israel, that he totally opposes limitations on arms sales to Israel completely. And he is more popular now than he was when he was elected. And the most popular politician in Pennsylvania today, this is according to Richard Baer, who was my guest earlier this week on the show, is Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro, who is a proud Jew, who has been a stalwart supporter of Israel since October 7th and an opponent of anti-Semitism since October 7th. According to Richard, I have not been following him, but he said he's been even stronger than Fetterman on this issue, and Fetterman has been stellar on this issue. So you have 2 Democrats in statewide offices in Pennsylvania, Fetterman and Shapiro, who are both totally opposed to anything. I mean, I don't want to say totally opposed. I don't know what Shapiro says. I'm basing it on what Richard Baer said, but certainly Fetterman has been the only Democratic senator who has openly parted ways with the White House over its mistreatment of Israel. That tells you about the mood in Pennsylvania. And, here you are, you're risking Pennsylvania, without which you cannot win the election, not to mention the rest of the swing states. And you're moving forward with this policy. Why? Why is this the Biden administration policy? My friend Lee Smith wrote an important article in Tablet about it, about Biden is saving Hamas. Why is Biden saving Hamas? And you should read it yourself and look into it. I do want to just add one last thing about the poll. It says that a large majority, 81% of the students, say they support holding protesters accountable. They agree with the notion that those who destroyed property or vandalized or illegally occupied buildings should be held responsible for by their university. Okay? And 67% say that occupying campus buildings is unacceptable. 58% say that it's not acceptable to refuse a university's order to disperse. And another 90% said blocking pro-Israel students from parts of the campus is unacceptable. But here's Joe Biden, giving in to this mob of campus anti-Semites and sticking it to Israel, right? And so, the question is why? And the answer is that this really is not about politics. I just want to show you another video, this one of pro-Palestinian protesters in New York. Look at the flag that they are burning. Right, they're burning Old Glory. They're burning the American flag. They're not just calling death to the Jews. They're not just calling death to Israel. They're calling death to America, just like they do in Iran, which is behind a lot of these protests through its proxies, Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, and all the rest of them. And here I just want to read a tweet by Congressman Brian Mast from Florida. I was really privileged to meet with him last month when I was in Washington. He's an Army vet. And he wrote this: I lost both of my legs in battle while defending our nation. I'll never give up fighting for America. These repulsive actions demonstrate just how deeply ingrained hatred for America is with these pro-Hamas protesters, okay? Hatred for America is ingrained in these pro-Hamas protesters. I want to show you one more really quick clip of the same Congressman Mast. This time he's being confronted by an anti-Semitic lady from Code Pink in the halls of Congress when he's on his way to his office. And I just want to show you a short thing of it. It goes on for like 3 minutes, and this lady is attacking him because he's supporting Israel, and first she says she's a Palestinian, and then this is what she says.
Well, I think that you are a heartless, soulless, cruel man. And today is Holocaust
From
Remembrance
you,
Day
I'll
for
take
my
that as a
people,
compliment.
my people, Jewish people. And I am saying, as a Jew, we said never again, and it's happening now. We say
You are
never
so
again.
hateful and disgusting. It's a shame. You are a crime against humanity.
Right, so she says that she's speaking as a Jew. Right, you know, a second ago she said she's speaking as a Palestinian. Now she's saying she's speaking as a Jew. Forget about the fact that she doesn't seem to know who she is, and she's probably not Jewish or a Palestinian, but who cares? She says, as a Jew. This is the term that we've heard resonating through these campus riots, and for years, actually, you know, with people like Peter Beinart and Not in My Name, If Not Now, all of these different groups, J Street, these post-Zionist or anti-Zionist Jews and Jewish organizations that are making common cause with Hamas and with the Palestinian people who invaded Israel and massacred our people on October 7th, and who support the massacre of October 7th with all their hearts and souls, right? So the Jews who are making common cause with these murderers, with these Nazis, are saying, as a Jew, I stand with the Palestinians. As a Jew, I oppose Zionism. As a Jew, blah, 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 you know, whatever. And, you know, and you look at them and you look at these calls by these bleeding idiots on the campuses, you know, calling death to America. And you understand, no, it isn't about politics. It's about things that are much more basic than partisan politics and who's going to be the next occupant of the White House or who should be the Prime Minister of Israel. It's about what it means to be Jewish. It's about what it means to be an American. It's about what it means to be a member of a nation. And obviously what it means to be free. And, you know, what we're seeing here is that you have a very small minority in the United States and an equally small minority in Israel of people who are agreed that there's something inherently immoral and wrong about being a Jew, about being an American, about being a member of a nation and the citizen of your nation state, and about being free. They agree. They don't think that this works. This is why people like Senator Schumer, who has no conscience, as former Ambassador David Friedman wrote on Twitter this morning, because Schumer said he stands with Biden, all right, and when Biden is cutting us off at the kneecaps or higher. And so you're looking at these people and you realize that what they're really going after is our sovereignty, is our ability to make sovereign decisions on our own behalf. I mean, what Sabine Tasa said there, wipe Gaza off the map, was the healthy and logical and rational position that any rational, thinking person would think after what happened on October 7th. Obviously, we cannot coexist with these people in charge of anything on the other side of a fence with us. Look at what they did. Look at what they believe. Look at what they stand for. Obviously, no rational nation would agree to exist with these people on the other side of the fence. Nobody would say that this is something that can lead to a stable equilibrium where we'll be able to go home to our houses, whether it's in the south across the border with Gaza or it's in the north across the border with Lebanon. These people cannot coexist safely with us because they exist on our border in order to come in and kill our kids and to kill our husbands and to kill our dogs and to kill us. That's why they're here. They're not here for any other reason. They don't want to live next to Metula because they also like apple orchards. You know, they also like the cool mountain air. They want to live next to Metula because they want to kill everybody in Metula. They want to kill everybody in Kiryat Shmona. And then they want to take over Metula and Kiryat Shmona after they've killed all the Jews in these places. That's what they want to do. That's what they did. And so here's the Biden administration. By the way, it's the same thing in America. Americans don't want to be overrun by 8 million illegals that nobody knows where they came from, who don't respect America's laws, who don't respect America's freedoms, who have contempt for the American way of life, because if they didn't, then they would be trying to enter legally. Their first act as residents of the United States wouldn't be to cross the border illegally. So why are they being allowed in? Why did the border disappear the day that Joe Biden was inaugurated into office? It disappeared because he and his administration and very large portions of the Democratic Party don't share the view that American values are worth preserving. Don't share the view that America is the last greatest hope for mankind. They don't think that America should be the land of the free and the home of the brave. They think that the United States should be the land of the serfs and the hope and the home of the weak and cowardly. That's why they're indoctrinating people to feel that they've been victimized or that they're victims of circumstance, that they're not actors, that boldness is not required to get through this world, but rather meekness and respect for authority and for your betters, and accepting wisdom that was invented 5 minutes ago in an Instagram reel, and not questioning it because it was put out by your betters. Now, that's what they're indoctrinating Americans to become. That's why they're saying that up is down and down is up, and a man is a woman and a woman is a man, and anyway, there's no such thing as either of them. That's why. Because how do you destroy a nation? By making people think that their nation and everything that they believe in and reality is all wrong and evil. And that what you really have to do is build constructs. And in the constructs, you're good if you go with the people who make up the constructs, and you're bad if you think that this is stupid and wrong and immoral and inhuman and anti-human. And take care of the people who live in your country first and worry about the United States first. You know, all of these things sort of go together in this melange, and it's repeating itself in Israel today, where you have people like Senator Schumer acting as a court Jew for the most anti-Semitic administration we've ever seen, calling for the overthrow of Israel's leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, in the middle of a war for our survival, and his replacement by somebody who will be an American stooge who will come in here and lose the war and accept this position where we become a vassal state of the Democratic Party that hates us. And that's basically what's at stake here. Gadi Taub wrote a fantastic article about it that came out yesterday in Tablet Magazine. You know, why are they calling for the ouster of Prime Minister Netanyahu? They're calling for the Prime Minister's ouster because he's the only thing that stands between us and the Americans accomplishing their goal of destroying our freedom and our land and transforming us into a vassal state of the Democratic Party that wants to destroy Jewish freedom in the land of Israel and make us into this compliant, weak dependency that breathes in and out at the pleasure of senior American officials like Maher Bitar, the director of intelligence in the National Security Council, Hadi Amar, the special envoy to the Palestinians in the State Department, Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, who both, are enabling Iran's nuclear weapons programs to reach fruition. That's who we're supposed to obey, because they're our betters, because they're the ones who are telling us what we have to do. We can't go into Rafah. That's what Biden said. If you go into Rafah, we're going to launch an arms embargo, if you will. If the United States is embargoing arms to Israel, then how far away is the Security Council resolution authored by the United States demanding an international arms embargo of Israel? And by the way, the United States has been implementing, forcing other countries not to sell us weapons since the very outset. I spoke about it a couple months ago that the German chancellor agreed to sell Israel 155 millimeter tank shells, and he immediately got a phone call from Biden that day after hours after the sale was announced, and suddenly the sale disappeared. So they're going to American allied governments, Israel's friends, Israel's allied governments, and saying, you're not allowed to sell guns to Israel anymore. And then you had Amsterdam coming out, the Dutch saying that they weren't going to give us spare parts for our F-35s, et cetera, et cetera. Canada, we needed those Canadian horses or whatever it is that they make there. So, that's where we are. That's what the Americans are already doing. So, we have bad choices, I guess, but we have the same bad choices as the American people do. And I think that the recognition, because there's really no holding back anymore. There's a question can we go full out? Are we in an open confrontation? Because if we're in an open confrontation with the Americans, then there are things that we can say and do that we can't do if we're trying to avert one. So at least, the good thing about what Biden is doing is that he's given us no choice, because it's obvious that he's done. He's in open betrayal mode. There was an incredible story. I was interviewed on One America news network this week, right before Biden gave a speech at the Holocaust Museum about Yom HaShoah. I think it was the day before yesterday. It's Tuesday. Anyway, so Biden was going to go up and they interviewed me, what do I think, and yada, yada, yada. And what was interesting about that speech, it wasn't a bad speech, but it doesn't reflect his policies. No, not at all. Anti-Semitism is bad. Oh, the Jews are terrible, right? That his policy is the Jews are terrible, and his rhetoric is, anti-Semitism is bad. So, the thing that was funny about that speech, right, is that it came out, I think it was an AP report that said that the administration waited for the official announcement to drop that they were embargoing arms on Israel, or halting arms shipments to Israel. I guess embargo isn't the right word. Halting arms shipments to Israel until after he gave the speech. Why? Because they wanted the shots of Jews sitting in the audience and clapping, to Biden's commitments to fighting anti-Semitism. That's why. They needed the photo op so they could use it in their campaign to show what a good friend of the Jews Biden is. And, Gadi in his article, when he was explaining how they're trying to install this potentate, this American puppet, Benny Gantz, to replace Netanyahu, he said that he doesn't think that Israel is going to be cannot survive another 4 years of a Biden administration. And I think it's fairly clear what another 4 years of a Biden administration will look like. It will be to transform Israel into an international pariah. It will treat Israel as if we're apartheid South Africa, to try to bring about the collapse of this country economically, with economic trade boycotts, with arms embargoes, etc., so that you have to have clandestine trade through third countries and things like that. And place us into an economic chokehold in order to foment an internal color revolution, which they've already been doing for over a year with the left-wing riots before October 7th, and they're doing more and more now to try to get a very small minority of Israelis to oust the one prime minister who's willing to stand up to the Americans. And infiltrating into our government, into our war cabinet with Benny Gantz and Gadi Eisenkot and even Gallant, the defense minister, who's so hostile to the prime minister who gave him his job. So all of these things they're doing. And, they'll try to do more of them going forward. And I think, what we saw this morning after Biden's CNN speech is we had a senior diplomatic source and the UN ambassador, Gilad Erdan, both saying that, the American people have to see what Biden is doing to Israel and that this is going to cost him in the election. And until this morning, that was the first time that I ever heard either a senior diplomatic source or any Israeli official actually making statements that are related to the U.S. presidential elections, that are saying, we don't want Biden to get reelected. I saw on Abu Ali Telegram page, which does a lot of stuff with the Arab media, that they show the footage from inside of Gaza and places like that. So they did a poll of their members on this channel. Who do you support in the U.S. presidential elections? And Trump got 80%, Biden got 8%, and don't know got 12%. So don't know got 50% more support than Biden did, okay? And obviously it's not a scientific poll and yada, 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 but it definitely reflects the way that Israelis view Biden. And you'll have this 8% of Israeli elites, like the army, trying to say, oh, but we got so much from Biden and CENTCOM has really been great with operational cooperation. I think that's risible. I don't think that that's true. I think that they've intervened and that they don't know what they're doing. These are the people who screwed up everything in Afghanistan and in Iraq. The last thing that we want is their input on how to fight our war, because they don't know how to win wars. They only know how to lose them. But be that as it may, they're praising all the support that we've gotten until now from the Americans. Obviously, that support is over from the Biden administration's perspective. And yeah, I think that people who care about fighting anti-Semitism in the United States, that is Jews, shouldn't vote for Biden. They should vote for Trump, who actually fought anti-Semitism in America, only to be demonized by the blob as an anti-Semite, even though he was the most philo-Semitic president in American history. And, he most pro-Israel president in American history, the best at fighting anti-Semitism in American history. And so he was pilloried by the left that is anti-Semitic. All right. And we're seeing that playing out now. All right. So I think that Jews who vote for Biden have a death wish. He will destroy the American Jewish community without a doubt if he's given a second term in office. And he'll use communist Jews like Tony Blinken and Rob Malley and Medea Benjamin, or with all these fake Jews, as the Jews are, to promote this. And that'll happen. And they're going after the Jewish state. That's happening now. We know that it'll just be worse because all the guardrails, to the extent that they even exist, will be gone. And what they're doing to America, what are you going to do in a second term? You like it? Then vote for him. You don't want borders? Great, then vote for Biden. Next time, your vote will matter much less because they'll give the vote to all of the illegal aliens who are flooding the United States. No doubt about it. That'll just happen. You like your justice system? Well, think about it, right? What's it going to look like in 4 years if Biden gets reelected? You like your sex? You like loving the opposite sex? You like families? You like having kids? You want to be able to educate your children the way that you believe? Well, then you probably don't want another 4 years of Biden. Right? You want the United States to be secure in this world? You want them to make rational policy decisions in foreign policy? You want them to stand with America's allies so that America's allies will be strong? And you want them to side against America's enemies so that America's enemies will be weak? Well, the Biden administration's foreign policy is to strengthen America's enemies and betray America's allies. So that's not what you want. And, I don't want to turn this into a Trump commercial, but I might as well turn it into a Trump commercial. Trump stood with America's allies and stood against America's enemies. And as a result, you had peace in the Middle East. You had America secure in its borders and becoming more powerful. I don't know, maybe it's a hard decision for some people because the demonization of Republicans and of Trump has been so successful. I mean, same here in Israel. Why would anybody vote for Benny Gantz, who is so obviously getting direction from a hostile foreign government, over Benjamin Netanyahu, who that hostile foreign government, has been spending the last 2 years trying to throw out of power by demonizing him? Because propaganda is very powerful. That's why. But just think about first principles, because that's what this is about. We've been badgered for years saying, oh, don't turn Israel into a partisan issue. And the response has always been, nobody here is doing anything to turn it into a partisan issue. If the Democratic Party is changing, it's not because of anything that Israel did. It's because of the people who are in control of the Democratic Party. It's because of the people who fund the Democratic Party. It's because of the people who are attracted to the Democratic Party and become the ground troops of the Democratic Party. That's why. It's because the Democratic Party has been captivated by hardened communist leftists who hate the United States and hate Jews. That's why. So, how is Israel supposed to make AOC like us? How are we supposed to make AOC voters like us? How are we supposed to, what possible contribution did we make to shaping, the worldview of people who are burning the American flags on the streets of New York City? What did Israel do to promote hatred of the United States of America? Nothing. Nothing at all. What did Israel do to promote communism in U.S. public schools? Also nothing. How did Israel undermine American security? Well, you have all these conspiracies that say that Israel brought America into the Iraq War, even though we supported it once the Bush administration said that they wanted to go in. But Israel opposed it and said, no, Iran is the problem, not Iraq. But once the Americans say, no, we're going in, we think Saddam Hussein is a problem, then fine, we salute the flag and say, go ahead, we'll help you any way we can. And it was the Israelis who trained Americans in counterterror warfare that enabled the Marines in Fallujah and the U.S. Army in other places to actually, penetrate the terror, the terror chains that had been formed inside of the cities of Iraq and conduct a successful counterinsurgency. We had Israeli trainers going to Fort Bragg to teach the Americans how to do it. When I was in Iraq in 2003 with the 3rd Infantry Division, they had no idea what they were getting into. They thought that they were invading Paris in 1945. They didn't know anything about Iraq. And it was only when they got in trouble that they suddenly called Israel and asked for help. They didn't want Israel's input about whether or not to invade Iraq. Israel had nothing to do with that decision. We opposed it. All the same, because we're loyal allies and we stood with the United States after they made the decision, we're blamed. No, we're not blamed because of anything we did. We're blamed because we're Jewish, and it's always the proper way to go forward when you get in trouble is to just blame the Jews and then everything will be fine. It's never true, but it doesn't matter. That's not why you're saying it to begin with. You're not saying it because you've researched the issue and you've come to this conclusion, unless your research involves going to anti-Semitic conspiracy theories to find out what the anti-Semitic conspiracists are saying so that you can quote it and pretend that you did research. So, when Israel is strong, America can walk away from the Middle East. When Israel's at peace with its neighbors because the United States is supporting the moderate forces in the Arab world and helping them to make peace with Israel, then America can disengage. But when the United States puts the Palestinians front and center in everything that happens in the Middle East and says, this is the thing that needs to be solved, then what you're doing is you're taking the one problem that has no solution except, by the way, total eradication, which is what Sabine Tasa said after her family was massacred, rightly, in terms of Gaza. If you don't want to do that, God forbid, then all you can do is ignore them, which is what eventually the Trump administration finally did, and that's how they got the Abraham Accords. But the United States under Biden and the Democrats don't want peace and stability. They don't want peace and stability in the United States, as Lee Smith wrote in Tablet. They want discord and chaos in the United States in order to undermine the American way of life. And they want discord and war in the Middle East in order to undermine the American way of life by discrediting everybody and everything that Americans believe in, first and foremost, by the way, the Bible, which says that the land of Israel belongs to the Jews. So again, this is not about politics. Even the college students aren't buying into this. So the youth vote is not voting on this issue. Or if it is, it's not necessarily voting for the Palestinians at all. And, Michigan is not the be-all and the end-all of the elections. And by the way, it's probably not going to be determined by the Muslim vote. It's probably going to be determined by the United Auto Workers. And when you look at what Biden is doing, you see that this is just Obama's legacy. Obama said at Grant Park after the election, before he was inaugurated, he said, what did he say? We are 4 days away from fundamentally transforming America. And that's what they aim to do. He got very far. He transformed the Democratic Party into a cultural Marxist party in his own image that hates Jews and hates America. And he believes that he will transform America into that vision in a second Biden administration. I think everything's out in the open. I didn't talk about the American election too much, certainly not in this way before. But I think it's time to put our cards on the table. Biden is done with this country of Israel. So we have no choice but to be done with Biden. Anyway, those are my thoughts. And next week is Yom Ha'atzmaut, Yom HaZikaron, our Memorial Day for our fallen, and Yom Ha'atzmaut the day after, because we live because of our sacrifice, not because of America. And so we'll be talking about that next week. Anyway, take care. See you soon. Have a good weekend. Shabbat Shalom.